Welcome back to Creative Thinkers. My name is Miguel Valenzuela, and today we have a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Monica Riehl, and she is a local surfer, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Hi, Monica. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming. So, first of all, are you from El Paso?
I am. Although,
tell us a little bit about that.
Most people don't think I'm from El Paso. They say I sound different. I don't look El Pasoan, but I came here from Venezuela when I was very young. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old and was raised here, went to El Paso High, go Tigers,
Nice.
and got a little bit kicked out of Loretto High School too. So, I mean, I'm in El Paso and I just went away for several years.
Where did you go?
Oh, man.
Tell us. So many things to say, right?
I've lived in Boston, I've lived in Los Angeles, New York City, Miami. I spent some time on an island of China and California, Santa Cruz. I think that's it. Yeah, that's about it.
One of the main things that we're here to talk about is the fact that you surf. How did you start surfing? Was it in China or was it in LA?
No, it was in Los Angeles. But you know, ever since I was a kid, I used to watch cartoons. And living here, I would watch cartoons where surfing was part of the cartoon some way. And I remember reacting to it, thinking, gosh, I really want to learn how to surf. And I was always drawn to dolphins. I wanted to be by the ocean. And I used to be so upset. I can remember being upset about the fact that I lived in the desert, and you know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So the idea of going somewhere where there was an ocean was just something that seemed impossible. So I think I buried that deeply in the subconscious mind. And when I was in Boston, I lived there for several years, went to school there, university, and played soccer. And there was a moment where I graduated from college, had a great job, was doing some really exciting things. I was a promoter in the nightlife there. I also had a 9-to-5, but it wasn't so much 9 to 5. I just began to find that 9 to 5 didn't work for me, and I worked with a company that allowed my brain to flow. But I mean, my point is, I had a great life set up, and I suddenly realized that I wanted to learn how to surf. So as a full-blown adult, I told everybody I'm going to LA.
So you quit?
So I said a year from now I will be in Los Angeles, and you know, people said, why would you do that? You have a great life here. And I did. I mean, everything was comfortable. But for those of the people that know me, they know that being comfortable doesn't mean that's where I'm staying. Usually it's, what do I want to do next? And so I was in Los Angeles within 9 months, I think, actually.
So not even a year? Not
even a year. I was able to find a job. I was recruited by a company and went out, sold out to corporate life for the sake of being on the West Coast, and tore my ACL. So my desire to surf was delayed a little bit, or the desire was there, but my ability to surf was delayed.
Right.
And so my corporate job allowed me to get some very fancy fixins, and I was able to undergo surgery, a 7-hour knee surgery.
Oh my gosh.
And the surgeon said, Ms. Riehl, you will never be an athlete ever again. You need to take care of your knee and stay away from athletics. And I said, okay.
That tells me that you're the type of person that really kind of goes against the grain for certain things, specifically your knee, right?
Well,
or nothing's impossible.
Well, I think both. I think, you know, I'm not contradictory for the sake of contradiction. I just feel like human beings are limited by our human abilities. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely.
Like, we think we know everything, but that's only what we know as human beings. And so when someone says to me, you will never be able to play a sport again, I think, well, you don't know everything. You don't know about how everybody heals, and you definitely don't know how I treat my body or my motivation. And I think everything is possible. You know, I've had people challenge me on that. And I think the important thing for me was just to say, Okay, well, for now, I'm going to focus on the day-to-day recovery. And when I decide it's time, then I'm going to try. And that's what happened. So
Do you think that creativity comes into play and imagination? How am I going to figure out a way to get to this point maybe a little bit quicker, or maybe at all because you were told you weren't going to be able to do it?
I think my creative nature allows me to think outside of what everybody else is taught. A lot of people say go through it, and if you can't go through it, it's impossible. I have patience, and so sometimes it's not about going through, it's about going around, and then eventually you get through. So I feel like creativity allows me to be more patient, to understand that things are not linear. And so just like the process of, starting and stopping and then starting again, in the business that I'm involved with now, working with businesses, oftentimes the point from A to B is not linear either. And so being creative just means being patient, understanding that the process doesn't have to happen when we think it's supposed to happen. So in that way, I think, creativity helps or plays a role.
Right, because one of the things that we had spoken about prior was the fact that you help clients figure out different ways to get things done, I guess, would be a good way to put it. Can you give us an example of that? Anyone, you don't have to mention names or anything, but a client that you spoke with and that you helped to get things figured out in one way, to get them ahead in life?
Well, I think there was a point in time where I just saw two people playing instruments at a party, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you all are tremendous. What's the name of your band and what's your future look like?" And they said, "No, we just do this because it's fun." And one of them was a professional at Harvard University.
Wow.
Actually led, I think it was like a studio very similar to this, and had a full-blown career doing engineering, audio engineering, and engineering as a whole within, I think it was Harvard School's School of Public Health or something like this. And the other one worked at a conservatory. And so, I don't know, I said, let's put a band together. Is this what you want? And so, long story less long, we became a very strong, successful threesome of
Really?
people looking into the music industry. We got signed with this company called Parma out of New England within, I think we started negotiating 6 to 9 months into doing this band, and the band is called Leo Leo. You can still find some of their information and music out there, but we had a really good run. And I'm proud of that project because it was the first project that really, I don't know, where I got to go into the music industry. I had never worked in the music industry. I made a lot of friends that are higher ups, that are founders of labels and presidents of labels, and Sony, Ryko Disc, Pandora. These are people that suddenly I'd find myself in rooms with them, and they were helping to make dreams come true for these two people that were talented musicians. And I don't know, that's the first thing that came to mind, but I've certainly had some similar experiences with a couple of actors, and now here locally with businesses that are just mom and pop shops that have a dream of being able to have a mom and pop shop. And
right.
And so, and I would say that it's even more satisfying doing it here in my hometown, because El Paso is so hard. It is. Oh my gosh.
It really is difficult.
People say you can make it if you make it in New York, and that's not true. A lot of us have made it in New York or LA, and it's super difficult for companies here that are, digging into their own pockets to be able to make things successful. So it's gratifying to work here and to be able to do that with some companies. But yeah, locally I have about 7 clients, and then I have 1 client in Los Angeles still.
So if somebody wants to talk to you about some how to think creatively, they can talk. They can actually call you or email you.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good.
I have a podcast too that's through iHeartMedia. I have a couple of podcasts, but one of them is called Small Business Help and Digital.
Nice. Tell us.
And it just,
What
it's
does that
free.
mean?
It's free.
Uh-huh.
If you have a small business and you need help or you want to understand digital that will help your company, your small business, you can listen to the podcast. It's divided by episodes and different material. We talk about things as simple and common as domains. What is a domain? What is a URL? And then we get a little more complex into how to spread your marketing budget, where to put that money, what are digital ads, what's trending, what's the best way to take advantage of your website, what are the do's and don'ts of content, because everybody talks about marketing and content.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's free. It's just for people to check out. And then from there, I think I mentioned my email address every episode, but for sure, yourfavoritemedia.com is my company. So
Nice. So you do all kinds of things, but you also talked a little bit about bringing surfing to El Paso.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
How in the world are you going to try to get this done? Or what is happening so far?
So
and what are we talking about?
if you go to elpasosurf.com, that's the project's website. And what we're talking about is a family. I've been saying the tagline, the name of the actual project is Southwest Surf Ranch.
Okay.
And it's a beach and boardwalk designed with the family in mind.
Right.
And it's also a surfable wave pool. So when people try to envision what that means or what it looks like, if you've been to Venice Beach, then you know that there's boardwalk full of vendors and basketball players and people working out in outdoor gyms, and you've got Sunglass Hut right next to a guy that's selling sunglasses for $10 a pop or two for $15. And so you have this amazing community of people that just go out there to see and to be seen. And the drawing factor that can be traced back to the 1920s is the surfing community. From the surfing community, you also have skaters that take in a form of role for that area, that community. It's very laid back. It's about freedom in this other freedom from, I think, society, the sort of 9 to 5 and societal rules. And so the draw largely for tourism is to come out and experience what that is. You have artists and musicians, also huge graffiti walls. And so the concept for me for Southwest Surf Ranch was bringing tourism to El Paso by way of surfers, because there are 35 million surfers in the world.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And 92% of those travel outside of their home break to be able to get consistent waves somewhere else. And we could go into like the microeconomy of surfing. And so for the last several years, about 3.5 years, I've been studying surf economics. I've been studying economics impacted by surf culture and the sport of surfing in coastal environments, but also how that same culture would impact non-coastal cities.
For example, is there a city that exists out there that has these?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a tiny mountain town in Wales called Dolgarrog. And years ago, in 2014 was when the idea started. The government was trying to figure out, how do we increase tourism? How do we bring economy to this area? Because it's cold, it's mountainous. The closest airport is an hour and a half away from the town. And somebody had this, crazy idea of building a surf park. What if we bring...
And this is in London. In
Wales. In Wales.
Okay.
So, but like El Paso is a huge mountain town. It's a mountainous desert town. This place, tiny, and maybe 400 people living here year round.
Really?
Yeah. So So the government invested money. They also partnered with a private company. They built this place called Snowdonia. And they thought, well, maybe the first year we'll bring in 75,000 tourists. And then they opened and the technology broke. They had to close for 4 months.
Okay.
So people around the world that were in the surf park industry were watching to see if these guys could be successful. And what ended up happening was within the first year, they had over 150,000 tourists that came to this tiny town.
Just to surf.
Just to surf. Rented a car, flew in, rented a car, drove an hour and a half. And there were some other non-locals, but within the country of Wales that would drive, of course. But I mean, that's insane. 150,000 tourists to this tiny town because of surfing. So I went back to school. When I started to talk about the surf ranch, people in El Paso thought I was crazy.
Right.
Reasonably.
Why
crazy.
is that? Because we live in the desert.
Right, because we live in the desert. Everybody's like, sustainability, which is like, cool. I'm all ears and am often saying to people, call me, text me, find me on Facebook, send me messages about your concerns or questions. You know, we have this this page, Southwest Surf Ranch, on Facebook, and I get these guys, mostly men, that think they're very smart, and they'll say like, oh, we're in the desert, water's a problem, why would you want to bring one of these? And I just want to point out that we're not affiliated with the city of El Paso. We are looking for a location. We have a private investor that is interested in giving us a location that's in a really interesting part of town. A lot of development around there.
Right.
And then we also have another city within New Mexico and another city within Texas that we're talking to about doing this. But I want everybody to know that we're looking at sustainability. We're looking at, there's a desalination plant here in town.
It's in the Northeast, correct?
It's on the Far East,
Okay.
yeah. But it is the second largest desalination plant in the world, which means we have a ton of water that is salt water. As you know, I need a lot of water for this project.
Right.
And I'm really interested in salt water because in order for us to have a similar experience of surfing in the ocean, we need the water to be at about a 2.5 to 3% salinity, which I don't know if most people know that if you and I could dig into the ground and stick a hose in it and drink water from it, most of the water tables in this area and part of New Mexico, the salinity is 47%, which is...
Didn't know that.
Yeah, super high, which is why we have the desalination plant here, right? To be able to process our water. It's fascinating, and I tell people, go and take a tour. It's super cool. And so... this project, it's not sort of this thing that I just haphazardly thought up. I thought about how do we make El Paso or the Southwest border region a destination. I started to study the surf economics, as I mentioned, and I found that so many surfers, not just myself, like everybody spends money to go find waves. And then if you are a surfer and you have a daytime job, you have to figure out surfing on the weekends because you can't get away. But Mother Nature doesn't care about your schedule. She
Absolutely.
doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
she doesn't care about...
Just like the rain the other day.
Right. She doesn't care if you have kids or, you know, your parents are sick. So you can't count on the fact that there are going to be waves when you want there to be waves. And so these surf parks fill a void and they solve that problem, because what does happen is if you can create consistent waves, and if I can plan that 2 weekends from now, I can go surf in Waco or Northern California or in a tiny country town in Wales or all over the world where these surf parks are beginning to spring about, then I save money and time because I can plan ahead.
Right.
Right now, there's also this thing called micro-seasonality that surfers react to. We're always looking at the surf report. Oh, there's gonna be good waves in Southern California, Baja California. like, let's drive, let me cancel work, let me, and
Really? They'll do that, huh?
oh my gosh. Like how people call into work after the Super Bowl here,
Right.
that's like a surfer's life. Oh, dude, there's good waves, surf's up. All right, let me call into work. Cool. And so, but micro seasonality happens in places like Costa Rica or Baja California, where people along the coastlines say, there's going to be a swell that's going to hit in this window of time. And so people go and flood these areas. Yeah, they flock. That's a great word for it. And then the area is sort of overwhelmed because they're not expecting this much tourism. The prices can also go high because it's your simple, basic supply and demand.
Right,
and
right.
so a lot of the surf economics behind these wave parks makes sense as to meeting supply and demand, also offering an opportunity for surfers to not have to be weekend warriors only and then not get surf, or even take these long trips. Like now, imagine people from California or Denver where they can take a direct flight to El Paso for a weekend or for 4 days, and they bring their families because El Paso has some good things to do.
Right.
For the entire family. You also have Juarez when people aren't saying it's unsafe. But my point is, economic development, in my opinion, here in the city has focused on these ancillary things like Topgolf, iFly, Dave & Buster's. And these companies are good to have, but they're great to have when you already have a draw here.
Okay.
Right? So if people are coming here, they go, well, I have to go there for a conference, or I have to go there for this, or we want to go there for that. So now that you're here, what do you have to do? Other than the great Mexican food, other than the people, oh, there's iFly, there's Dave & Buster's. That makes sense to me. What my problem is with how economic development has failed, in my opinion, the way our economic development community has failed in El Paso is that it doesn't bring companies here that are going to pay you more. It doesn't bring companies here that are going to pay the average citizen more. They're still paying very low wages.
To build up our community.
And they're not building up our community in that sense. What they're doing is, if you're a mom and a dad with 3 or 4 kids, your kids are going to you going, Mom, there's iFly, there's Topgolf. And maybe as a treat, you go once or twice, but you don't have the money because you're not being offered an opportunity to get a better job, a higher paying job. So we're tapping the same wallets, asking them to spend money on all of these things.
Right.
And it's just, you can't. The same wallets can't do that. So then we have what I call ADHD, economic ADHD.
What does that mean?
Well, for me, it means that we are suddenly like, there's Dave & Buster's, let's go spend money here. There's Topgolf, let's go spend money here. Oh, iFly just opened, let's go here. And there's no consistency because we can't afford it. There's a new restaurant, let's try it once. There's another new restaurant, let's try it once. And so then every time something new opens, it takes business away from other businesses. That's why I call it local economic ADHD.
Right.
So we have these really great bars and concepts that can't be supported by the local community because most people are making, what's the average, $27,000, $30,000 a year.
So the concept is to bring more money in.
Right.
That way that money can then be spread so people can start doing other things.
Exactly.
Like surfing.
Exactly. Well, and if we bring in something like the Surf Ranch, then we're bringing in people that on average make $75,000 a year that have disposable income.
That's why they're traveling to go surf.
They're traveling to go surf. They can afford a lot of things, and they're supporting the small business, is supporting the big business because they're saying, what else is there to do? And then on top of that, you get, so you have the businesses that will last longer. You have people that are now driving through and saying, we're going to stay a couple nights because there's this thing we want to try. And, you know, a lot of times people ask me, the second gripe is, well, something like this means you're going to ask the citizens for money, for taxpayer money.
Right.
Our taxes are going to go up. And I spent...
Which I think is a big deal in this community, a big issue in this city.
Yeah, for sure, because, I mean, I don't want to pay more property taxes. I'm a surfer, but if somebody came to me and said, your property taxes are going to go up to support this thing. I would be like, you guys are nuts. You're nuts. So I took a lot of the information, the feedback, and I went back to school. And now I will have an MAIS in public administration, psychology, urban and regional planning. And part of this was I really studied the guts of surf economics, the guts of surf park industry. It's been interesting. A girl from the desert has really made a name outside of El Paso in this surf park industry by way of just, I'm annoying all kinds of people just to get information, and developed a funding model and a business model that right now is not what they're using to build these surf parks. Okay. But my funding model steers away from asking the taxpayer for money, more money. It steers away from being dependent upon one investor or two investors. And it's also creating something that the community can use as a whole in the same way that we would interact with a beach, which means you don't go and you pay the universe or God to say, I want to use the beach water.
Exactly.
You just go and you use the beach. You find a place where you can park and you don't have to pay for parking, or you pay the $10 to $15 a day, but you don't have to pay beyond that except to enjoy and interact. You can buy some water, eat lunch. And so I've taken that model and really applied it to this so that people don't have to pay $25 to go into the surf park. People don't have to spend $90 an hour to surf. And
they can be part of that anyways.
Right.
Which I think is an awesome kind of concept, because I think a lot of times we think we have to go to these places and do that one thing and spend that money on that, when if we had something like that, I think it would encompass the whole community.
So on Instagram, I'm on as Your Favorite Surfer, and you can follow the project for El Paso Surf through that. That's my personal surfing account. And for business in El Paso, yourfavoritemedia.com is the best way to get in touch. There's a contact me link, and you can email me directly.
Are there any new projects that you're working on in the future? You said you're doing a little bit of radio. Are you going to kind of stick with that for a while?
I am working on Talk El Paso. It's on 690 AM. It's an iHeartMedia product. And we're working.
You're also a DJ.
No, I say I fancy myself a producer, but I mean, I don't know. The truth is, I'm working with the host, Andrew J. Polk, to create a dynamic programming opportunity. We want our listeners to really enjoy that hour that he's on. We want to expand into a little bit longer than that, maybe online instead of just on the radio.
Right.
And we're working on, there's also The Tipping Point, which is on Fox Sports 1380 with Michael Tipton. He has a great show that we're working with as well. And I do Facebook Lives sometimes for Sunny 99.9 FM, 93.5, Power 102. And part of this is through, yourfavoritemedia.com. We're just building my podcast, working together to just give great programming for the listeners. And the projects that I'm working on in this region are bringing telemedicine to New Mexico.
Oh, I think that's important.
Yeah, it's a fantastic project. I'm excited about it. And it's through the Santa Teresa Children's Day and Night Clinic with Dr. Marin. She's an amazing, amazing person, and I'm so excited to be working with her on that.
Well, I wanted to thank you for being our guest today. And I want to let everybody know that you guys should always keep being creative. So thank you very much.